Good
guys.
afternoon, gentlemen. How are you?
Doing good.
Well,
Good.
What's going on?
Well, it's been a few weeks. Business, personal, travel for all of it. We've been kind of doing different things. So, first order of business, I think we should, because of all of our travel, we should probably have someone buy me a cup of coffee. They can donate right there, and you know,
I like how that went right over the
If you
top
missed-
of me. Thanks. Appreciate that.
Buy yourself a cup of
There you
coffee.
go. There you go.
I'm trying to cut
Um,
down.
I'll just email
All right,
it to you.
Today we're going to talk about something obviously topical with the bank industry, some ideas and best practices to help prevent wire fraud. Before we get into that, I'm Brian Bradford with B&L PC Solutions, based out of Hauppauge, Long Island, New York.
David Luft with LDD Consulting out of the green chili capital of the United States, which is Albuquerque, New Mexico. LDD Consulting.
And I'm Dave Groot with WinStar Technologies in Culpeper, Virginia.
And Brandon Bowers with Eisenramper Managed Technology Services out of sunny South Florida.
I will be in sunny South Florida tomorrow.
Oh,
It's honestly beautiful here right now.
Yeah, my son's leaving Fort Lauderdale now. He's heading over to Tampa. We're going to have a nice little trip down there. All right, so SVB, Signature, these collapses. I mean, it's been a while since we've had something like this of this magnitude. I think it was what 08 or something like that we had some government bailouts. But I think these are at least for Signature, which is a New York-based regional bank. They're ended up being pretty heavy into crypto and with Silicon Valley. I think it was the same similar line of business, definitely in the tech industry, and we saw it before our own eyes just basically collapse. And what happens is this is a time where, as in any other topical news stories, the bad actors, the threat actors, the hackers want to get in there and steal and just build up their bank accounts with all this activity. So the banks can only go ahead. Sorry, who was going?
I was just going to say the thing to think about is like it's the most opportune time for attackers to strike right now because what's happening? People are opening up new accounts. They're contacting their vendors. They're contacting their clients. They're saying, "Hey, I need you to update our wire transfer information, our AC information to our new banking account," right? And it's happening in droves right now because anybody who has those accounts is opening up new accounts someplace else and trying to update their
At these
payment
big banks too,
information.
JP Morgan, Citigroup. I mean, they're getting hammered, and
Yep.
and to your
I
point,
think it's important to
Yeah.
acknowledge, though, that we are not discussing hacking as being the cause of the
Right.
banks failing.
correct.
You're
Correct.
saying that because the banks failed and everybody's now transferring their money, this is a great time for them to get into some phishing campaigns and get into
Exactly.
Yep.
Okay.
Exactly.
Just want to be clear on what we're
They're
discussing.
taking the opportunity, right? That's what hackers are. They're opportunistic.
Sure.
They want to
right.
use a case like this that's public. Information is out there. They know what's going on, so they can take advantage of that.
One thing I'll start with, and then we can kind of circle around here, is that you kind of have to think of it. If your normal business practice, if you normally say, I don't know, 5 times a month or every day, however often you wire money to investors or to third parties, whoever it is, and your process is get the email, send the wire, get internal approval, send the wire, whatever it is, that process, I think a few steps need to be added, at least now in terms of just validating that initial communication, make that phone call and validate that because this is when they know what's going on. So improve your own internal processes just for your own sake. And again, we're talking about prevention here. So if you continue to do what you're doing and something comes through that, we always do it that way. Well, you shouldn't. So I think that's
So,
something to
what are
kind of
some good
take note of.
ideas? What are some things to do?
I mean,
Well, add another factor of
Yeah.
even though we talk about multi-factor, that's another factor of authentication. Make that phone call.
For instance,
Go ahead.
well, I'm just saying, like,
Oh, right.
are we saying like the policy should be if you have a wire transfer that exceeds $10,000 that it has to be approved by 2 people, or locally, or like what is the practice or policy? What's the advice that we want to give people? Like, what's a good idea? I mean, there's the practice of having a deposit account, which is the account that you use to put money in and take money out, and then it immediately gets transferred to something else, right?
We just did that recently, where we set up a separate account so that if it does something weird happens, they can't have access to everything. I was going to mention that, but you win, Dave.
I mean, I got a bank who are in our bank account. We can take ACH in. It is not going to take ACH out. Period. There is no withdrawal allowed from that account.
Right.
Under no circumstance. The only way is to transfer to another account.
Well, so going back for a second, I think a simple measure, what you mentioned, Brian, is at a minimum, and I don't even think just right now. I mean, I think this should be permanently part of a process, is that there's some type of second validation. So you get an email in, well, then you need to make a phone call with them to validate it is who they say they are, and is actually requesting that change. And kind of alluding to what you were mentioning, David, too, is you kept saying policy or process. I think I find that most businesses don't have like a formal policy that they follow for wire transfers or for fund transfers like this. And I think that's a very simple policy that can be, created. And it's like ultra important because it's at the end of the day going to save you a ton of money just by having a simple one pager that kind of gives some directive on exactly what process to follow.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of, small businesses notoriously don't have policies and procedures in place or in writing anyway, right? Most things are just by transfer of knowledge.
Yeah.
It's a small enough environment, what have you, or it's on the fly. We're figuring it out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you're just new enough. You just don't even know what you should make the process be. But I think cybersecurity and these types of things that are happening, cyber insurance requirements, all those things that small businesses have to participate in, right, is forcing them to at least get to a certain level of maturity where some of those processes and policies are going to be commonplace, right? It's just going to have to happen. It'll be a part of the package of starting your business, right? Like, we're going to think through these 5 things while we lay out the business plan. Here's the additional things we got to do. And that really needs to be the mentality and the culture in order for us as a country and as our economy to get past and survive this hacking.
Yeah, I think putting, we talk about this pretty often too, but putting the controls in place, if you don't have them already, on your email tenant to flag something. If you have account numbers or wire numbers going out, you know what, collect that data, flag it, and have your boss or someone else notified that this is going on. Because right now, if you don't have those controls in place, you're just, again, not that you're doing anything wrong, because that was your best practice, but now you have to raising the bar a little bit and just talk to your IT company, get some controls in place to monitor that.
Yeah, we kind of do have to just up the game, and it doesn't have to be hard. It just needs to be a different way of looking at things and a different way to think about stuff, right? First off, we don't do things in response or reaction. If somebody's got a really sensitive position, then maybe we put some more controls on them where certain types of email is being monitored. If it's got certain content in it, it can't go out without an approval, or it's encrypted, or, there's a lot of tools out there that don't have to be super expensive or costly, that are really a part of your Microsoft stack that most people are using in their business today. And so it's easy.
I mean, what Brian mentioned is free, right? It's just part of the DLP, alert policies you can get set up.
Yeah, and we have that.
We
don't do any, banking. And the one time I did get an alert was a legitimate. Someone was sending their personal information to someone else, and it was legit. But I just want to know about that stuff. What's leaving or coming into my company. I think somebody should be in charge of of that data and knowledge, instead of it just being just wide open and having no.
We get emails every day of the just a snapshot of the balances of all the accounts every day, just so that if there's an anomaly, like, hey, yesterday that account had $10,000 in it, now it's got 1. What's going on? Like, that's not supposed to be happening. Right. You can see that, right?
Yep.
Lots of little things like that.
Yeah, and I've heard that if you typically would handle things through a third-party email, a public, Gmail or one of these other accounts, maybe now don't do that. Use corporate email for all financial correspondence. Just, you know,
It comes back to all of those basics that
it
we've
does.
been
Oh,
saying,
100%.
right?
Yeah.
Complex passwords, not reusing them on different websites, MFA, not sharing roles. Everybody has a separation, all those things are the important things.
I've been telling our customers, I sent out some recommendations based on what was going on. Adding the multi-factor was something that I mentioned. Make sure you're making a phone call. On top of that, especially now, I'm not saying, to stop doing it, but especially now, while all these accounts are probably being created, things are changing in terms of payment methods. If you see any emails coming from somebody who is appearing to be your bank, especially if you bank with one of these that's kind of closing out, take an extra good look at any of those emails. And I told them, don't call the phone number or click any of the links in the emails just in case. Go right into the website and log in, or call the customer support number on
Yeah.
the website, because this is another opportunistic moment that they know what's going on with these banks. Now they can create lookalike domains, or they can send emails trying to appear to be one of these banks to get you to log in, click something, try and get access.
I'm
Something
not
else to
mistaken.
consider.
If I'm not mistaken, I heard over the weekend on the news that they were even kind of like limiting some of the normal requirements to get certain accounts set up to help expedite the movement, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a nice gesture and it's probably necessary, but that's another opportunity, right? Because they're
Sure.
not every check and balance is in place right this second.
Mhm.
And so, wow, if they are savvy enough about that, they can slip right in there.
Yeah. I actually have a TD Ameritrade account with some small investments in it, and Schwab bought them.
Well, we
So
know you're the rich
everything's
guy in the crowd.
no. It's a minuscule amount of money in there, but Schwab bought them, and everything's moving to their account. So I got an email yesterday or the day before. Here's some more. This is happening in May, but click here for more information. And right away, my alert. I was like, wait a second, is this legit? Whereas maybe a month ago, I wouldn't have been. I would have, because I know that's happening. I would have clicked on it, and it was like, you have to kind of just, walk on digital eggshells. I don't know what you call it, but yeah.
I hate to say it, I really do, because it's not how you want to look at humanity, right? But you have to get into a zero trust, and I'm talking about when you're not able to identify the person who's
Right.
standing in front of you talking. That's different, right? I already know who I'm speaking to when you're right there, but you just can't rely on that email being reliable anymore. You can't count on that. You just can't. And so, yeah, you have to scrutinize everything. And it can be stressful. It can be full of anxiety. People, they're having a rough time with it, but boy, oh boy, wait till you get hacked. I mean, then the anxiety is going to be through the ceiling.
Yeah.
Right, David?
I had somebody come over to my door the other day and say, "Hey, I locked my keys in my car. Can you help me get in?" I'm like, "Sorry, I can't help you right now."
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Can you break in for me? Yeah. No, right.
And
Prove it. Let me see the title and your ID.
As I
And
mentioned,
you want to think, oh, sure, I can help you. I got a hanger. Let me come out here and see what I can do.
Right.
yeah, it was interesting for sure. I mean, it seemed kind of legitimate, but like I just don't trust anything anymore. And we had a customer that had called the number on the back of their bank card, like you mentioned, Brandon, and they called it up, talked to the people, and they got all the financial issue because it was a credit card issue. They hung up the phone. About 30 seconds later, the phone rang. It was the company calling them back. They remoted into their computer.
The company calling them back?
Yeah, but how would they know all that information if it wasn't the same company from the call they just had? So then I was
are they
talking to
spoofing
my
my number? Is
staff,
what they're doing?
and my service coordinator used to work at a call center, and she said it's very common that they'll give your information to somebody, a friend or somebody, to call you up and hack into your stuff. And so I'm just going to start telling all my customers, if you don't make the call, then don't let them in. And if it's a number that pops up on a web browser, don't call that one either. But one that you got off the back of your credit card or off their website, like you mentioned.
That's honestly a really good point, because I don't like taking, like, I tell them, hey, you know what? I'm not comfortable here. I'm going to call back on the number. And if I get you or somebody there that's telling me the same thing, then, I'll know that this was a legitimate call. And I just hang up on them. And
I
okay.
love
Today's
returning
internet, you can
those
say, I
guys.
can't hear you. Are you still there? Hello? Hello?
I have a great
I'll call
time.
you
Oh,
back.
well, hold on. Let
I'm
me
just
call
hang
my
up on
IT guy because he'll be able to talk to you real,
We not to get too far on a tangent here, but something that we're trying to implement is caller validation. So if somebody
Yeah.
calls, that's a client says, or even if we're calling a client, we say, hey, we want to connect to you. We had a customer say something to us that, well, we're not really sure that it was one of your techs calling that wanted access. And like, that's something that they're starting to worry about. So we're going to send a push notification to them when we're calling them and want to connect so they know it's one of our techs. And same goes back when they're calling and asking for a change. We're going to send them a notification so that they either give us a code or give us an approval, and
Yeah,
we can
we
validate
have
it to them.
we were looking at a product which we're actually demoed it and purchased it. Just didn't have the time to onboard with them, so I put it on hold for now. But it's it's validation for your client. So when a
Yeah.
client calls in for support, they have a pin, and that pin will get texted to them. You can go as kind of as deep as you want with the solution, but you can either give everyone their own pin or have it auto generate. So when they call, they have to validate who they are. And I have one customer that really is they're using that now, and I mean, a prospect, they're using that now, and they want to make sure that we're able to do that. I said, well, we can do static for now, but I think that's going to be something that we're going to see more and more based on what we're seeing. Because, guys, let's be honest, like Wireford is happening right now. It's been going on every day, 365. I mean, it's not happening only now. It's always going on. So you're always vulnerable, and it's just now that the attention is brought to it, the risk goes up because of what's going on, and the phishing emails, and that's where it's going to come from. 90% of the time is from something like that. But it happens. It's going to happen 6 months from now, 2 years from now. You're going to forget about it or whatever. It's still going on.
To go back to the topic with phishing emails and these opportunistic attacks, layering in some type of AI-driven anti-spam system, I think, is a much needed thing now. Some of the traditional general like heuristics and categorizations that are just tossing in bulk emails into one place isn't enough. And I think adding either some of the advanced licenses through 365 or some of these third-party anti-spam systems to try and mitigate impersonation attempts, or some of these like domains that'll just get spun up that are lookalike domains that look like your domain, which is still impersonation, but domain impersonation. I think that's also an important layer that can be added in that can help mitigate user mistakes, right? So you can train them on policy, you can tell them, train them on like, hey, what to look for, and don't click links, and make sure you call. But at some point, what does IC3 say, or some of these other? It's usually like a 4% click through rate, whether you train everybody or not. Like globally, I think it's 4% or somewhere between 3 and 4. Like somebody's going to get through, and once they get through, is there something else, systems in place that can help mitigate those clicks or block it or make sure the email doesn't even get there in the first place?
Yeah. And one thing we could say is look at your business insurance policy, and are you covered for something like this? And if not, maybe that's get yourself some coverage. I mean, it's you may have nothing, and I know what I have, and I know our between our E&Os, our cybersecurity policies, and all that. We have a ton of insurance, and we're well protected. But the average business, that a lot of even my own clients I talk to about cybersecurity insurance, no, and it's like the need is there now, and we're able to help. Number one, bring the premiums down, because if you go in there and you don't have these three things, well you're going to pay this much more than paying us to put these controls in place, and you're going to have a lower premium and be better protected. So that's something else to consider too. Look at your insurance.
Right.
Well, a
And,
lot of
and
this
to be
is
honest with you, this is a question I have. I mean, is there an insurance that will cover though if you have wire fraud? I mean, because a cyber policy, I don't think is going to provide any coverage for that.
Well, I think if you have insurance and you have controls in place that would have prevented that, and you did that, then I think there's some kind of something you can
Okay.
coverage you can have. Yeah, for sure.
That's why we use credit cards for everything.
That you receive, you mean, or that you just for your
No,
your
for us when we're doing stuff, just
Yeah.
to make sure, because credit cards, they protect the heck out of you. But the other thing is security training. Just you got to have people doing it because it just kind of keeps you on edge.
Well, you should
I had to just
tabletop your
take
own
my
process.
assessment today.
Yeah. Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
My required training. I got it in my email.
There you go. What'd you learn?
I had to take a test because that's how they're going to decide what to make me take this year.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
I had to take
It
an
was like a
assessment.
baseline.
Everybody in the organization is, so that we can lay out the plan.
Okay.
Got it.
That's good. Anybody got anything else? Any other advice, guidance for best practices? So we covered.
There are a lot of products out there, and I'm not going to get into product names or any of that kind of thing, but there are tools and there are companies who are able to help small businesses achieve these things that aren't going to suck up the entire budget. Unless you're compliance driven, then it gets a little bit more expensive if you got regulation and such. But for just general security and best practice, I really do recommend people, if they're not knowing or even thinking they know, they should be calling somebody that's a professional that can guide them through that. It's just not something to ignore.
Yeah. And from what I've experienced firsthand is it most of the time it falls on controls. If the controls aren't there, we had somebody that got it was a 6-month process, but someone was sitting dormant in their Office 365 tenant and just watched the language of how emails were back and forth and eventually sent an email out that had $150,000 wired to somebody because the dialogue was there, and it was a 6-month.
It's just natural.
Yeah.
Look, for years, for decades, all the users were running as administrators on their computers, the users did whatever they wanted to do, right? Like they could install the program, they could do this, they could do that, and it became normal. It's the norm. And so now here you come with security and you say, hey, you don't get to go to that website anymore. Or, hey, we don't let you decide what programs get installed. The company decides what, right? Because that's the best practice. That's the way to do it. But that is such a shock to the people that are involved that
Depending on the industry and people, oh my goodness.
Yeah. You got to ease them into it, right? Because
their role.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You know who I am?
Because otherwise it fails. And then they're worse off than they were when they started. Right.
Yeah.
So you got to get that buy-in, and
Buy-in
it's
is
hard,
important. Agreed. Maybe to your point, David, we've experienced exactly that. To the you know who I am in this company. Like, don't tell me I can't. And it's like, this is what you guys signed up for. This is.
Well, you have a little bit more of an argument when there's a compliance regulation, right? Because then you can say, is that what you're going to tell the inspector, right? Like, exactly. Is that your answer for the auditor when they come in after your breach? That's what you're going to say?
It's out of 80
your computer
people
wasn't secure because you own the company.
Exactly.
That's your answer? Because if it is, fine, we'll just put it on this piece of paper and you go ahead and sign right here that's the decision you made.
Yeah.
And now we're good. And I guarantee you that conversation will change very quickly.
Yes. Well, they're not allowed to use third-party email. Well, that's no one's allowed to use third-party email, but I'm going with you. I have to. Like, well, then no. It's so you come across that.
I mean, my wife tells me all the time, we're still wearing masks in our office. It's mandated. Like
I know you look different. Okay. All right.
And I walk in and I don't have a mask most of the time. Right. And I'm the one who's breaking the rules. And so I'm constantly getting told that you can't do that. Like, just because you are Dave doesn't mean anything. If that's the law, that's the law. And she's right.
Is that why you work from home now? Yeah.
I'm going to tell her you said that, Dave.
Oh, she'll watch. She's probably watching now. Come on. It's true. I mean, she's not wrong.
Right.
You know, I might not like it, and I may not completely agree with it on some level, but it is true. It's not fair. If you're going to have a policy, you got to impose it on everybody.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yes.
All
And
right,
it gets-
guys.
I get
Anything
that
else?
it gets frustrating because it adds a lot more effort to stuff, but it's not as bad as losing the money you'd lose.
It
Or the
becomes-
reputation loss
it-
Yep,
and
yep.
potential lost business.
But in time, it does become part of your normal routine. Like it can become not such an overbearing change, right? Like, I mean, I got to tell you, you know, we're all doing this, and I know you. Like, we're doing MFA every place we go. We're doing password manager. We're doing like all of us are doing that. And in the beginning, we didn't. We were the same as everybody else. Like, I use the same password on many servers. Like, what are you talking about? Like, you know, no, you know what I'm saying? But so I don't know. It's changed. It's not what it used to be.
Yeah, and it's changed. Like to your point, it's changed for us too. Like we're
Yes.
adapting to this change, and then what's happening today is going to be different in 6 months from now. Who you know, we don't know.
Right.
But we're moving in the right direction. But the opportunities and the threat actors are only getting faster and better at what they do. Unfortunately, and you look at, speaking of AI and all this other stuff that's
Yep.
available now, and it's pretty scary what can be done. And you're talking about recognizing people's voice on the phone. I mean that we're not going to be able to do that anymore. You know, you're going to think you're talking to me, and I mean, not that anyone wants to sound like me, but there's another me out there that is able to just
That's what
speak
those
like
one-time
that.
codes are going to be for.
Exactly.
Well, the funny thing is Brian's actually on vacation overseas right now, so I don't even know who's on this with us.
It's
There
an
you
AI webinar, is what it is.
Yeah.
It's his avatar.
All right, guys.
Very
Well, I think
cool.
we did all right here. If you want anything to close with, now's the time.
No, I think we're good.
Two-factor authentication on your wire transfers. Create a policy. Set up anti-spam. Make sure you're looking over those emails before you actually click any of the links.
Yep.
Call them
And if
directly.
you're last
Well, when you
pass
create-
user,
When you create the
Change
policies,
your purpose.
make sure your employees sign the policies.
or
Yeah.
a test,
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
we deliver those through our security awareness training, the
Mhm.
policies, so that it shows that they watched and read and understood.
Mm-hmm.
It works
Cool.
nicely.
Well, thank you, guys.
All right,
We will,
everybody have a good time.
reconvene
Yeah,
next
Be
week.
safe.
Same time
See you
next
guys
week.
next week.